Scene opens with a shot of a cozy diner, snow swirling outside the windows. The camera focuses on a woman, Jessica, working efficiently behind the counter. She's simply dressed but carries herself with an air of quiet confidence. Voiceover. Warm and inviting. Have you ever met someone who just doesn't seem to fit their surroundings? A puzzle you can't help but try to solve. That's the feeling that hits Ethan Mitchell, a powerful CEO, the moment he steps into a remote roadside diner to rescue his stranded mother, Eleonora, from a raging blizzard. The woman who saved her, the diner's manager, Jessica Porter, is a walking contradiction. Her hands are those of a worker, but her posture and speech suggest a world far removed from coffee pots and vinyl booths. Ethan, a man accustomed to getting answers, finds himself stonewalled. "How long have you worked here?" he asks, trying to piece together her story. Jessica, unfazed by his powerful presence, retorts, "Long enough to know when someone's interrogating me." The storm worsens, trapping them all inside. The roads are closed. "Welcome to my impromptu storm shelter," Jessica announces, a wry smile on her face. As the wind howls, a sudden crack of thunder plunges the diner into darkness. "Perfect," Jessica mutters, but she moves with a surprising calm, her flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Ethan, dropping his CO persona, offers to help. Well, the CO knows how to roll up his sleeves, she teases. "I wasn't born in a boardroom," he replies, a hint of a smile in his voice. Working together, they create a small haven of warmth and light with candles and hurricane lamps. The flickering flames cast a magical glow, transforming the humble diner and the people within it. In this soft light, the ruthless businessman disappears, and Ethan Mitchell, the man, emerges. When he thanks her for her kindness to his mother, the sincerity in his voice surprises Jessica. "Anyone would have done the same," she says, deflecting the praise. "No, they wouldn't," he insists, his gaze intense. "You treated her like family." Ethan can't shake his curiosity. "Who were you before this?" "Jessica Porter," he asks, his voice soft but persistent. The question hangs in the air, charged with unspoken meaning. Jessica's guard goes up. Someone who learned the hard way that not all successful men have integrity, she replies, her words a veiled warning. She tries to walk away, but he gently catches her wrist. The touch is electric, a spark in the stormy night. "I've offended you," he says, genuinely contrite. Some stories aren't meant to be shared with strangers during power outages, she says, pulling away. "We are hardly strangers now," Ethan counters. You've seen my mother at her most vulnerable, and I've seen ... double quotes." He hesitates, searching for the right words. "What have you seen, Mr. Mitchell?" she challenges. He looks directly at her, his observation striking a nerve. "Someone hiding," he says simply. "Someone much too intelligent and capable to be just managing a roadside diner. Someone running from something. Or someone." Meanwhile, his mother, Eleonora, awakens. The reunion between mother and son is tender, a quiet mending of a fractured relationship. Eleonora is sharp-eyed and sees the tension between Ethan and Jessica immediately. "She's a remarkable young woman, isn't she?" Eleonora remarks to her son. "So capable. There's something unusual about her." Eleonora's wisdom shines through. Not everyone belongs where life has placed them. The tension escalates when Ethan tries to pay Jessica for her help. "Contrary to what you might believe, not everything has a price tag," she says, her tone icy. But Eleonora, ever the mediator, steps in, chiding her son for trying to throw money at kindness. She then cleverly maneuvers the two of them alone, sending Jessica to show Ethan to the staff room where he'll sleep. In the small, confined space, the air crackles with unspoken attraction. "Why do I get the distinct impression you're trying to avoid being alone with me?" Ethan asks, his voice low and intimate. He steps closer, cornering her not with aggression, but with an undeniable presence. "I think you're a man used to getting what he wants," Jessica says, holding her ground. "And right now you want to solve the puzzle I represent. I'm not interested in being analyzed or acquired, Mr. Mitchell." Just as he corrects her, Ethan, a powerful gust of wind rattles the building. Jessica instinctively reaches out, her hand landing on his chest. For a breathtaking moment, they stand frozen, connected. She can feel his heart beating as fast as her own. The scent of his cologne, the warmth of his body. It's overwhelming. She pulls away first, flustered, and flees downstairs. But she can't escape the knowing eyes of Eleonora. "You and my son are circling each other like weary cats," the older woman observes with a smile. "He's difficult, my Ethan. Life made him that way. But there's a good heart underneath all that armor." As Jessica tries to deny the connection, Ethan reappears, drawn back into the orbit of the mysterious woman who has captured his full attention. Trapped by the storm, surrounded by secrets and sizzling tension. One thing is clear: this long night is only just beginning. What secrets is Jessica hiding? And can Ethan break through the walls she's built around her heart? This is a story of unexpected encounters, second chances, and the powerful, unpredictable nature of fate. Thanks so much for watching. If you're as captivated by Ethan and Jessica's story as we are, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. See you in the next video. Without your subscription, we might never cross paths again. Don't risk it. Hit that follow button, drop a comment, and share this video right now. Let's dive into the story. The howling wind rattled the windows of the Maple Street diner as Jessica Porter wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time. Outside Burlington, Vermont, was buried under the worst blizzard in decades, a swirling abyss of white. Her last customers had left hours ago, but Jessica couldn't bring herself to lock up. The diner was her whole life now, the last remnant of her dreams. "Another cup, hun?" She asked Mr. Winters, a regular who braved the storm for her homemade pie. "Better not," he chuckled. "Margaret will have my hide." He slid a 20 across the table. You should close up, Jessica. This storm's getting worse. Jessica just smiled. I'll stay open a bit longer. Some folks might need shelter. As if on cue, the door burst open in a gust of snow. An elderly woman stumbled in, bundled in a coat far too thin, her face pale with cold. Oh my goodness. Jessica rushed to her side, catching her as she swayed. Are you all right? I got lost. The woman trembled. My taxi. Wrong street. I can't find my son's address. Jessica guided her to a booth. Mr. Winters, could you turn up the heat? I'll get some hot tea. Soon, the woman, wrapped in an emergency blanket, held a steaming mug. Thank you, dear, she said, her cheeks regaining some color. I'm Eleanor Mitchell. Jessica Porter. You picked a rough day to get lost, Eleanor. Where were you headed? Eleanor sipped her tea. My son lives here. I haven't seen him in, 5 years. I thought it was time to make amends. That feeling regret, hope it resonated with Jessica. Do you have his address? Eleanor produced a slip of paper. Lakeside Manor, apartment 1201. Jessica's eyebrows shot up. Lakeside Manor was the most exclusive address in Burlington. That's quite a ways from here, she said gently. The roads might be closed until tomorrow. Eleanor's shoulders slumped. I should have called him first, but I wanted to surprise him. He's always so busy. You can wait here as long as you need, Jessica assured her. It's warm. After Mr. Winters left, Jessica brought Eleanor a bowl of hot chicken noodle soup. You own this place? Eleanor asked, looking around the worn but spotless diner. Jessica laughed. Just manage it. I always wanted my own restaurant. It's charming, Eleanor said. And what's your story, dear? A smart, kind young woman like you. Jessica's smile faltered. Life took some unexpected turns. Ancient history. As the storm raged on, Jessica made a makeshift bed for Eleanor in the back office. I should call my son, Eleanor murmured, looking tired. Ethan is cautious. He has security cameras notify him of visitors. Jessica handed her the phone. Eleanor dialed, but sighed. Voicemail again. She left a message. He's probably in a meeting. Ethan practically lives at his office. What does he do? Jessica asked. He runs Mitchell Innovations, Eleanor said, a mix of pride and sadness in her voice. He was always brilliant. Jessica froze. Mitchell Innovations. Its CEO, Ethan Mitchell, was infamous, ruthless, cold, demanding. His stern face was a fixture in the business section. Your son is Ethan Mitchell, she asked, unable to hide her surprise. Eleanor nodded. You've heard of him. Everyone in Vermont has, Jessica said carefully. Whatever you've heard, Eleanor said softly, as if reading her mind. He wasn't always like that. After his father died, something changed. He built walls, pushed people away. Even me. Rest now, Jessica said gently. I'll be right outside. Returning to the empty diner, Jessica felt an odd sense of peace amidst the swirling snow. Suddenly, headlights cut through the blizzard. A massive black SUV pulled up, and a tall figure battled the wind to the diner's entrance. The door opened, and Jessica found herself face to face with the last person she expected, Ethan Mitchell. His sharp, intense blue eyes, the same shade as Eleanor, scanned the room and landed on her. "Looking for Eleanor Mitchell," he said, his voice clipped and businesslike. Jessica straightened, her composure practiced. "Mr. Mitchell, your mother is resting in my office." She was half frozen when she arrived. A flicker of concern crossed his eyes, then vanished. "Take me to her." It was a command. Jessica crossed her arms. "She's sleeping." The cold and stress exhausted her. "I didn't drive through a blizzard to be told I can see my own mother," he said, ice creeping into his tone. "And I didn't risk staying open in this storm to have someone barge in and disturb an elderly woman who needs rest." Jessica replied, her own voice just as firm. A silent battle of wills ensued. To her surprise, he exhaled and nodded. "Fine. May I at least look in on her?" Of course. She led him to the office, opening the door just a crack. He looked in at his mother, sleeping peacefully, his expression unreadable. "She was trying to surprise you," Jessica whispered back in the diner. She offered him coffee. He accepted, looking surprised by its quality. "How did you find her?" he asked. She stumbled in, half frozen. Jessica explained. She mentioned trying to make amends. Ethan's jaw tightened. "My mother excels at dramatic gestures." "Braving a blizzard seems more like determination," Jessica observed. "You don't know anything about our situation," he said sharply. "True," she shrugged. "But I know she could have died out there trying to find you. That says something." He studied her with new interest, clearly not used to being challenged. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. Jessica smiled. "Is that the question you ask everyone you meet?" He looked startled, then the corner of his mouth twitched. "Only the ones who aren't impressed by me." "I'm impressed by people who earn respect, not people who demand it," she said. "But yes, your mother mentioned you run Mitchell Innovations, and you're Jessica Porter," he stated, his eyes narrowing as he took in her appearance. "You manage this place." "Let me help," I offered, following her into the kitchen before she could protest. She pulled ingredients from the refrigerator, her movements efficient and practiced. "Make yourself useful and slice the bread." To her surprise, I rolled up my sleeves and did as instructed. The knife felt familiar in my hand, and I cut even slices from the artisan loaf. "You've done that before," she observed, her tone a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "I worked in a deli through college." At her startled look, I added, "Did you think I was born a CEO?" "Honestly." "Yes." I let out a rich laugh, a sound that seemed to surprise even me. "My father was a high school science teacher. My mother was a nurse." "I grew up in a two-bedroom house in Rochester and worked every summer from age 16. Jessica handed me tomatoes to slice. "So, how did you become ... She gestured vaguely at my expensive watch and tailored shirt. ... "The heartless corporate titan," I supplied dryly. "Your words, not mine." I created an algorithm that revolutionized supply chain management while still in grad school, I explained, deftly arranging the tomato slices on the bread. Built a company around it. Made some good decisions and some brutal ones. The rest is business history. And somewhere along the way you stopped speaking to your mother. Jessica added softly. My hands stilled. That's a complicated situation, but family usually is. She turned to the stove, stirring a pot of soup she'd set to warm. You're not close with yours, I asked, moving beside her to help. Jessica kept her eyes on the pot. My parents died when I was in college. Car accident. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but they were genuine. It was a long time ago. She reached past me for bowls, her arm brushing against mine. For a second, that same electric awareness flared between us. And after college, I pressed gently, where did Jessica Porter go before she arrived at this diner? She ladled soup into bowls with precise, controlled movements. New York finance, it didn't work out. Wall Street, my interest sharpened. Which firm? Does it matter? She replied, placing the bowls on a tray. That life is behind me now. It matters because you're running from something, I said quietly, and whatever it is has forced someone with your intelligence and education to hide in a small-town diner. Jessica finally turned to face me, her composure slipping for the first time. Not everyone who steps away from corporate America is running or hiding, Ethan. Some of us just discovered that success by those standards comes at too high a price. The raw honesty in her voice silenced me. We stood there, facing each other in the dim kitchen. The storm raging outside while something equally turbulent built between us. Who hurt you, Jessica? I asked, my voice barely a whisper above the wind. Her laugh was soft, bitter. The better question is, who didn't? Before I could respond, the back door of the diner burst open, sending a blast of frigid air through the kitchen. Jessica whirled around, startled, as a man staggered in from the storm, snow-coating his expensive overcoat. Thank God, the newcomer exclaimed, stamping his feet. I thought I'd freeze to death out there. I stiffened beside her. James, I said flatly, what are you doing here? He looked up, and a wave of recognition and relief washed over his face. Ethan, I've been trying to reach you for hours. Your mother called the office looking for you, and when I heard you'd gone out in this storm, ... Double quotes his words trailed off as his gaze fell on Jessica. For a suspended moment, recognition flashed in his eyes, followed immediately by something darker, fear. Jessica Porter, he said, his voice suddenly strained. Well, this is unexpected. Jessica had gone perfectly still, all the color draining from her face. James Harrington, she whispered, of all the diners in all the storms. ... I looked between them, my analytical mind racing to connect the pieces. You two know each other. It wasn't a question. But James answered anyway, his charming smile returning far too quickly. Ancient history. Miss Porter once worked at my investment firm. He extended his hand toward her. Small world, isn't it? Jessica stared at his hand as if it were a venomous snake. Very small, she agreed, not moving to take it. And getting smaller by the minute. The kitchen seemed to shrink round us, the air thick with an unspoken tension. I watched the rigid set of Jessica's shoulders and the forced casualness of James's smile. Miss Porter was one of our brightest analysts. James continued smoothly into the silence. Left quite suddenly, as I recall. I had my reasons, Jessica replied, her voice steady despite her pale face. Compelling ones. James removed his snow-dusted coat, hanging it as if he owned the place. Water under the bridge, surely. He turned to me. When Eleanor called looking for you, I was concerned. The roads are treacherous. You drove all this way because my mother called the office. My skepticism was obvious. I was already in Burlington for the Nortec acquisition meeting, James shrugged, when I couldn't reach you. You know how I worry. Jessica wordlessly gathered the food onto the tray. I should take this to Eleanor. As she tried to pass, James shifted, blocking her path. Let me help you with that, Jessica. We have so much to catch up on. I've got it, she said flatly, sidestepping him. I watched the interaction with growing suspicion. James, a word. I gestured toward the walk-in pantry, away from the main kitchen area. Once inside, I didn't mince words. What history do you have with her? James raised an eyebrow, straight to the point as always. She worked at Harrington Capital for about 18 months, promising career until she had some kind of ... breakdown, an ethical crisis, she called it. He shook his head. Shame. She had potential. And that's all. Now, what else would there be? James's smile didn't reach his eyes. Don't tell me the great Ethan Mitchell is interested in a diner manager. She's hiding something, I said, ignoring the jab. And based on her reaction to you, it involves Harrington Capital. James leaned against a shelf, his expression unreadable. Ethan, you know how these young idealists are. Don't they all come to Wall Street dreaming of changing the world, only to find the reality of business a bit too much to handle? That was James's take on it. He claimed Jessica couldn't separate her personal feelings from her professional decisions, that it made her unstable. But looking at her, she seemed anything but unstable to me. Of course, James just laughed. He'd known her for what, a few hours. He, on the other hand, had employed her for over a year. He told me, trust me, there's a reason she's serving coffee in Vermont instead of managing portfolios in Manhattan. I studied my friend and business partner carefully. James had been my right-hand man since Mitchell Innovations began, instrumental in our meteoric rise. We'd weathered countless storms together, both professional and personal. Yet, something about his casual dismissal of Jessica just didn't sit right with me. She took care of my mother, I said finally. I owe her for that. James agreed, of course, but warned me not to mistake gratitude for something more. He clapped me on the shoulder, starving, and suggested we rejoin the ladies. When we returned to the main dining area, Jessica and my mother Eleonora were seated in a booth, talking quietly. Jessica's posture was still tense, but she'd regained her color. As we approached, her eyes skipped right over James and focused on me. "Eleonora's been telling me about your childhood science experiments," she said, her tone a little forced. "Apparently, you were building robots while other kids were riding bikes." I slid into the seat beside her, replying that my mother exaggerates. "I do not," Eleonora protested. "You rewired the entire basement when you were 12, nearly burned the house down." I admitted that it was just that one time, a small smile playing on my lips. James, already reaching for a sandwich, jumped in. "Ethan was always ahead of the curve. It's what makes him such a brilliant CEO, willing to take calculated risks that others avoid." Jessica's next question, though seemingly innocent, was sharp. Even when those risks affect people's lives, the undercurrent in her voice made me look at her closely. James, ever smooth, replied, "Business always affects lives. The trick is focusing on the greater good rather than individual sentimentality. And who decides what that greater good is?" Jessica pressed. "Those with the vision and authority to make such decisions," James answered, turning the question to me. "Wouldn't you agree, Ethan?" All eyes were on me. I could feel the sudden weight in the room. I chose my words carefully. "I believe in ethical business practices. Profit without principle is ultimately unsustainable." I saw a flicker of surprise in Jessica's eyes, though her expression remained neutral. "Noble sentiments," James remarked, though sometimes difficult to apply in practice, as Jessica discovered. He turned to her. "How long have you been in Burlington?" "It must be 3 years now." 4, she corrected, her jaw tight. 4 years, James echoed thoughtfully. "Amazing how time flies." "You know, Ethan, Jessica was involved in an interesting situation before she left Harrington Capital. Perhaps she's told you about it." The threat in his tone was crystal clear. Jessica's knuckles turned white as she set down her spoon. "James," she said quietly, "don't." My mother, sensing the tension, suggested we continue the conversation tomorrow, feeling suddenly tired. Jessica quickly agreed and stood to help her back to the office to refresh her blankets. The moment they were gone, James leaned toward me. "She hasn't told you, has she?" "Told what?" I asked. "Why she really left New York?" He shook his head, feigning surprise. "It's not something she'd be proud of." "Stop dancing around it," I demanded. "What happened?" James studied me for a moment before dropping the bombshell. "She accused Harrington Capital of fraud, claimed we were manipulating market data, misleading clients. She tried to take her evidence to the SEC. I frowned, processing this, and were you?" James looked genuinely offended. "Of course not. We were cleared of all allegations, but by then, the damage to Jessica's reputation was done. No firm on Wall Street would touch her after that kind of betrayal. So she ran to Vermont. He painted her as a rogue employee who tried to destroy the company that gave her everything. His expression then softened with practiced concern. Look, I'm not telling you this to speak ill of her. I'm telling you because we're on the verge of the biggest acquisition of our careers. The Nortec deal will triple Mitchell Innovations' market value. If nothing derails it, what does Jessica have to do with Nortec? I asked, confused. Probably nothing, James conceded. But timing is everything. We can't afford any complications. Before I could respond, Jessica returned. She stood there, head held high despite the obvious strain around her eyes and something twisted in my chest. Eleonora is settled, she announced. I've made up a couple more beds in case the storm brings other strays. James stood, straightening his suit. I should check in with the office. Is there anywhere I might make a private call? The storage room has the strongest signal, Jessica replied, her voice completely flat. After James left, a thick, uncomfortable silence fell between us. I watched her methodically clearing dishes, her movements precise but almost robotic. Were you planning to tell me? I finally asked. She didn't pretend to misunderstand about James. It didn't seem relevant until he walked through that door. About your allegations against his company, I clarified. Jessica's hands stilled. She turned to face me, her expression a carefully constructed mask. So he shared his version of events. He says you accused Harrington Capital of fraud, that the allegations were investigated and dismissed. Her lips curved into a bitter smile. Is that all he said? Should there be more? I asked. She studied me for a long moment. Would it matter if there were? James Harrington is your friend and business partner. I'm just the woman who happened to shelter your mother during a storm. The distance in her voice bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I prefer to form my own judgments, I told her, based on what? You barely know me, Ethan. I'm a good judge of character, I insisted. She turned back to the dishes, her voice laced with weary resignation. So was I once. Look how that worked out for me. And with that, she left me standing there, caught between my oldest friend and a woman I was just beginning to realize I didn't know at all. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think is really going on here? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one. Ethan stepped closer, invading her space until she was forced to face him again, her back pressed against the cool, rough-hewn wood of the barn wall. The air between them crackled, thick with unspoken words and years of history. Tell me your side, he insisted, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her. Jessica's laugh was short and humorless. Why? So you can weigh my words against James's and decide which of us is lying. She shook her head, a stray strand of hair falling across her face. I don't need to justify myself to you, Ethan. Damn it, Jessica. The words erupted from him, sharper than he intended. He caught himself consciously lowering his voice, forcing a calm he didn't feel. I'm just trying to understand. No, "You're not," she shot back, her eyes flashing with a sudden raw anger that momentarily stunned him. "You're trying to protect your business interests. James made sure to mention your big acquisition, didn't he? He probably warned you that I might be a complication." Ethan's silence was more damning than any confession. He couldn't deny it. The Nortex deal was everything, the culmination of years of work, and James had, in fact, used that exact word, complication. "That's what I thought," she said, her voice laced with a bitter disappointment that cut him deeper than her anger. She moved to step around him, a clear dismissal, but he reached out, his fingers closing around her arm. The contact was electric, a jolt that seemed to travel through both of them. "What did you find at Harrington Capital?" he asked, his voice quiet, almost a whisper. He needed to know. He needed the truth, not the carefully constructed narrative James had fed him. For a heartbeat, he saw something flicker in her eyes, a vulnerability, a willingness to confide. It was the Jessica, he remembered, the one who believed in right and wrong with a fierce passion. But just as quickly, the wall slammed back down. The moment was shattered by the squeak of the back door opening again. James returned, his timing, as always, impeccable. He paused in the doorway, a picture of polite concern. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, though the smug little smile playing on his lips suggested he was anything but sorry. "Ethan, I really need to speak with you about the Nortex situation. Something's come up." Jessica seized the opportunity, pulling her arm from Ethan's grasp. The loss of contact left a strange coldness on his skin. "I should go check on that generator anyway," she murmured, her gaze fixed on a point somewhere over James's shoulder. She slipped past them and disappeared into the growing dusk of the back lot, leaving a void in the space she'd occupied. James stepped forward, his focus entirely on Ethan, his expression now serious. He held out his phone. "You should see this email. It just came through from one of the analysts." Ethan took the phone, his eyes scanning the dense columns of figures and text in the message. His brow furrowed, his expression hardening with each line he read. "This data can't be right," he stated, his voice tight. "The valuation is off, way off." "That's what I thought," James replied, his tone grim. "But I've had them triple-check the figures. It's solid." He took the phone back, his movements precise and controlled. "The Nortex valuation was inflated," Ethan finished, the grim reality sinking in. "If we'd gone through with the acquisition at the agreed-upon price, we'd have overpaid by millions." He stared out into the darkness where Jessica had vanished, a cold dread creeping up his spine. "At best," James added quietly. "At worst, we could have been accused of knowingly engaging in securities fraud. If this had come out after the deal closed, it would have destroyed us." James ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a rare sign of agitation. "We dodged a massive bullet, Ethan." Ethan's mind was racing, trying to process the nearer catastrophe. "How did you find this? How did our team miss it during the initial due diligence?" "One of our junior analysts caught an anomaly," Pure luck, honestly. A needle in a haystack, James explained. But it makes me wonder how many other deals, how many other companies might have similar time bombs lurking in their financial reports. This feels ... deliberate. We need to overhaul our entire due diligence process, Ethan declared, his business mind taking over, compartmentalizing the shock from the ground up. If we can miss something this big ... exactly my concern, James agreed, his eyes locking onto Ethan's. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, as if weighing his next words carefully. There's something else you need to know. Ethan waited, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. The analyst who caught the discrepancy, James began, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial level. While he was digging through the historical data, he found Jessica Porter's name on some of the original Nortex prospectus documents. From her time at Harrington Capital, the air went still. Ethan stared at James, trying to decipher the implication. "What are you suggesting, James?" "I'm not suggesting anything," James said, holding up his hands in a gesture of innocence that felt utterly false. "I'm just noting a very curious coincidence. She had access to the early Nortex financials, the very documents that contained the seeds of this inflated valuation. Then she conveniently makes explosive fraud allegations against her employer, Harrington. Now, years later, she mysteriously reappears in your life, in your own mother's house, the very night before we're set to acquire that same company." Ethan felt a surge of defensive anger. "That's quite a conspiracy theory you're spinning." James just shook his head, his expression one of calm, unshakable logic. "Is it? The woman who tried to destroy my family's company, who made our lives a living hell, just happens to be here with your mother on the eve of our biggest deal. I don't believe in coincidences that convenient, Ethan, and neither do you." Ethan wanted to dismiss it. He wanted to tell James he was being paranoid, that he was letting his personal history with Jessica cloud his judgment. But he couldn't. Years of business instinct, the gut feelings that had helped him build his empire, were screaming that James was right about one thing. The timing was too perfect, too suspicious. Jessica Porter was hiding something. That much was crystal clear. The way she had looked at him, the anger and the hurt, it was all tied up in this. "I'll talk to her," Ethan decided, his voice firm. He had to know the truth for the sake of the company and for his own peace of mind. "I'll get to the bottom of it. Just be careful," James warned, his hand landing on Ethan's shoulder. "She's convincing. Very convincing." He gave a slight wry smile. "Trust me, I learned that the hard way." When Jessica returned from the back, her hands slightly smudged with grease, she found the two men standing exactly where she'd left them, their heads close together as if sharing a secret. The easy camaraderie was gone, replaced by a tense, charged atmosphere that made the hairs on her arms stand up. They fell silent as she approached, their expressions shuttered. Whatever they had been discussing, it was clear it was about her. The battle she thought she had left behind years ago had just found her again, and this time the stakes felt impossibly higher. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. They were deep in conversation, but broke apart the moment she approached. The sudden thick silence spoke volumes. The way Ethan looked at her, no longer curious but guarded, almost analytical, told her everything she needed to know. The generator should last through the night, she reported, her voice clipped, professional, and distant. If you gentlemen will excuse me, I have some inventory to complete before morning. Jessica, Ethan called after her retreating form. We need to talk. She paused, but didn't turn around. I think your business partner has said everything that needs saying. Mr. Mitchell, the formality stung, a deliberate war between them. You haven't told your side. Would it make a difference? She finally glanced back, her smile tinged with sadness. Some battles aren't worth fighting twice. Later that night, as the storm howled its fury against the old inn, Ethan found himself wide awake on the narrow cot. The Nortec situation, a deal worth millions, demanded his full attention, yet his thoughts kept circling back to Jessica Porter. He could unshake the image of the hurt in her eyes when she realized he was doubting her, the weary resignation in her voice. A soft knock interrupted his troubled ruminations. He opened the door to find his mother, Eleanor, wrapped in a thick blanket, her expression serious. Mother, you should be resting. I've had quite enough rest, she stated. Moving past him into the small, Spartan room, we need to talk about Jessica. There's nothing to discuss. Don't lie to me. Ethan, I raised you. Eleanor settled onto the edge of the cot, her gaze unwavering. James Harrington has poisoned your mind against her, hasn't he? Ethan let out a long, frustrated sigh. It's complicated. There's history between them. Professional conflicts that could directly impact our business. And that's all that matters to you. Business. Eleanor's disappointment was a palpable force in the room. That girl saved my life today, and you're letting that snake turn you against her without even hearing her story. I tried to hear her story, he shot back, his voice rising slightly. She wouldn't tell me, his mother said, her tone softening with understanding. And would you, in her position? After the way you looked at her, the judgment in your eyes. She shook her head slowly. I may be old, Ethan, but I know a good soul when I meet one, and I know when my son is making a terrible, terrible mistake. What would you have me do? He asked, throwing his hands up in exasperation. Dismiss legitimate business concerns just because she was kind to you for a day. I would have you remember that not everyone in this world is motivated by profit and power, Eleanor said, rising with a quiet dignity that made the small room feel like a courtroom. Your father would be so disappointed to see what you've become. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. Before he could formulate a response, a commotion from downstairs shattered the tense silence. "Stay here," he instructed his mother, his protective instincts kicking in as he headed for the stairs. In the main dining area, the scene was tense. Jessica was confronting James, their voices low but crackling with intensity. "You have no right," she was saying, fury evident in every line of her body, her hands clenched at her sides. "No right to come here and threaten me again." Threaten James's smug smile was infuriating. "I'm simply having a friendly conversation, reminiscing about old times." His smile vanished the moment he noticed Ethan standing on the bottom step. "Ah, Ethan, there you are." Jessica and I were just catching up. "It didn't sound like reminiscing," Ethan observed, his voice dangerously cold as he crossed the room to stand near Jessica. "Mr. Harrington was just leaving," Jessica announced, her arms crossed defensively across her chest, her chin held high. "Apparently, the storm has cleared enough for him to travel." Her gaze was a challenge, daring James to contradict her. The air was thick with unspoken history and animosity, and Ethan found himself squarely in the middle, finally realizing the depth of the mistake he had made. "Thank you so much for joining me for this part of the story. I can't wait to see what happens next, and I hope you feel the same way." If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter. See you in the next video. Ethan, we should leave to the Nortec situation requires our immediate attention. Nortec ... Of course, it all makes sense now. What do you know about Nortec? Ethan, this is hardly the time or place. We have a crisis to manage. It was Nortec, wasn't it? That was what I found. The fraud at Harrington Capital. It involved Nortec. Nortec, the word hung in the air between them. You're delusional. Ethan, we need to leave now. Explain. 3 years ago, I discovered irregularities in Nortec's financial reports while working at Harrington Capital. Multiple reports were systematically altered to inflate their value. When I brought my concerns to management, I was told to adjust my findings. She's lying. Nortec's financials were thoroughly vetted, but by whom? The same team you instructed to falsify the data. The same analysts who mysteriously all received promotions right after I was discredited. Continue. When I refused to participate, I was removed from the Nortec account. A week later, I found evidence that the manipulation went beyond Nortec. It was systematic. Harrington Capital was artificially inflating the value of multiple companies before acquisition deals. Preposterous. If there had been any truth to these allegations, the SEC would have. The SEC investigation was a sham. By the time I gathered enough evidence to approach them, someone had already altered the original data. My access credentials had been used to make changes I never authorized. It made it appear as if I was the one committing fraud. You were set up, yes. By the time I realized what had happened, I'd been fired for ethical violations and blacklisted from every financial institution in New York. My former colleagues were warned not to associate with me. My entire reputation was destroyed. So you ran. I didn't run. I was pushed out, threatened with litigation if I pursued my claims. With no job, mounting legal bills, and suddenly toxic to every firm in Manhattan, I had to start over. A convenient story, is it? The plows came through, didn't they? The roads are passable. You could go check for yourself. Check the records, the digital trail might be gone, but paper lasts. There are still people who remember. People who were too scared to speak up then, but maybe not now. The truth has a funny way of surviving, even when you try to bury it under a mountain of lies or snow. Go on, James. Your Nortec crisis is waiting. I'm sure you're eager to get back to managing it. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're captivated by this unfolding drama, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. We love having you as part of our community. See you in the next video. Scene: a tense confrontation in a lavishly decorated room. Jessica, Ethan, and James are the focus. Ethan's mother, Ellie, has just entered. James's voice, smooth once more, cut through the air. Double quotes, ... ultimately unprovable. The SEC found nothing because you destroyed the evidence, Jessica retorted, her voice sharp. But you didn't get all of it. James went completely still. A flicker of something crossed his features before he masked it. What do you mean? A cold, triumphant smile touched Jessica's lips. Insurance policy. Before my access was revoked, I made copies. I may have been naive about how far you'd go to silence me. But I wasn't stupid. You're bluffing, James said, but the color had drained from his face, leaving him pale. Am I? Jessica shifted her gaze to Ethan, her eyes challenging him. The Nortec acquisition you're pursuing. What made you suddenly question their valuation tonight? Ethan's expression was a perfect mask of neutrality. Data inconsistencies, he stated, his voice even specifically revenue projection anomalies. Discrepancies between reported earnings and actual cash flow. Jessica nodded slowly, a grim satisfaction in her eyes. The same issues I flagged 3 years ago, I'm guessing. Only the numbers are probably worse now because they've had years to compound the fraud. Elena, who had appeared at the base of the grand staircase, watched the unfolding drama with growing concern. Ethan, he didn't turn to her. It's all right, Mother. Go back to bed. No, Elena said firmly, her voice surprisingly strong as she approached the group. I don't think it is all right. Not if what I'm hearing is true. James, seeing an opportunity, quickly recovered his composure. He turned to Elena, his face a picture of reassuring charm. Mrs. Mitchell, I assure you, this is just a misunderstanding. Ms. Porter has a personal vendetta. Young man, Elena interrupted, her gaze unwavering. I was married to a high school science teacher for 40 years. I know what integrity looks like. And right now, I don't see it in you. James's practiced smile froze on his face. With all due respect, enough. Ethan's voice was like a blade, cutting through the tension. He turned his full attention to James. James, did you know about the Nortec fraud? There was no fraud, James insisted, his tone dismissive. Just aggressive accounting practices common in the did you know. Each word fell like a hammer blow in the silent room. For the first time that night, James looked truly uncertain. He gestured towards Jessica in disbelief. You're not seriously taking her side. After everything we've built together, she's nobody, Ethan, a failed analyst who couldn't handle the pressure of real business. Answer the question. Ethan's voice was dangerously quiet now. James's expression hardened, his desperation turning to defiance. Fine. Yes, I knew Nortec was cooking their books. Everyone knew it. It's how the game is played. We would have fixed it after the acquisition, restructured their reporting. No one would have been the wiser, except the shareholders, who would have paid an inflated price, Jessica pointed out coolly. The employees who would have lost their jobs in the restructuring, the pension funds invested in both companies. Collateral damage, James scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. He turned his attack on Ethan, the kind of casualties Ethan has never hesitated to accept in pursuit of growth. Isn't that right, partner? Ethan's expression remained impassive, but Jessica saw something shift deep in his eyes. Was it regret? Or maybe recognition? Ignoring James's attempt to implicate him, Ethan looked directly at Jessica. You said you have evidence. I do, she confirmed. Not here, obviously. It's in a safe place. Alleged evidence, James corrected with a sneer, which conveniently can't be produced right now. Jessica's gaze was steady. I don't need to produce it right now. I just need to explain what it contains. The original Nortec reports, emails directing the cover-up, everything. And when I do, Ethan will have a choice to make. The room fell into a heavy silence, thick with unspoken accusations and the weight of what was to come. What do you think Ethan will do? Let me know your predictions in the comments below. This story is just getting started, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you get notified for the next chapter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ethan, we've been friends for 15 years. Partners. I've stood by you through everything. Are you really going to throw that away based on the word of this waitress? Manager. The word of a manager. Ethan remained silent, weighing, evaluating. I could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes. Loyalty versus truth, friendship versus integrity, the empire he'd built versus the very foundation it stood on. Think about what you're doing. If she takes this public, it won't just be me who falls. Mitchell Innovations has been involved in every major deal Harrington Capital has structured for the past decade. Your reputation, your company. Stop. Ethan's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of finality. You're making my decision easier with every word, James. I moved to stand beside Jessica, placing a supportive hand on her arm. The simple gesture of solidarity brought unexpected tears to her eyes. James looked between us, his face a mask of disbelief. You can't be serious, Ethan. Everything we've built was built on fraud. Apparently, Ethan's face had hardened to granite. Get out. You'll regret this. James hissed, his voice a low threat. When your stock plummets and the lawsuit starts, I said, get out. Ethan stepped forward, his heightened presence suddenly intimidating. Now, before I call the authorities and have this conversation in front of witnesses with badges, for one tense moment, it seemed James might refuse. Then, with deliberate calm, he straightened his coat. This isn't over, he said quietly, not by a long shot. After James stormed out, the diner fell into a heavy silence. Jessica realized she was trembling, a cocktail of adrenaline, relief, and lingering fear coursing through her veins. I should check if he's actually left, she murmured, needing a moment to compose herself. Let him go, Ethan replied, his gaze still fixed on the door. We have bigger concerns now. I squeezed Jessica's arm gently. I'll make us some tea. This seems like a conversation that needs tea. When I had bustled off to the kitchen, Ethan finally turned to face Jessica. His expression was unreadable. You've had this evidence for 3 years, he said, his voice low. Why didn't you use it? Jessica sank into a booth, the fight suddenly draining out of her, leaving her exhausted. I tried. No one would listen. James had thoroughly discredited me, and Harrington Capital had resources I couldn't possibly match. Then there were the threats. What threats? At first, they were just professional ones, then more personal. She looked down at her hands, her voice barely a whisper. One night, someone broke into my apartment. Nothing was taken, but my files were clearly searched. The next day, I received a photo of my parents' graves with a message. Some things should stay buried. Ethan's jaw tightened. James, I never found proof, but the timing was persuasive. She looked up, meeting his eyes, a world of pain and fear in her gaze. So I left. I started over, tried to build a quiet life where no one from that world would ever find me. Until tonight, Ethan said softly. Until tonight. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our story. For all the years of silence and hurt that had passed between them, the bond between Jessica and Ethan was still there, undeniable. It was a shared moral clarity, a compass pointing true north that cut through all the messy complications of their lives. The evidence is in a safe deposit box, Jessica said, breaking the quiet intensity that had settled over the room. Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady. In Boston, he nodded, understanding immediately. It was a plan they had made years ago, a contingency for a day they hoped would never come. Once this storm clears, he continued, his voice firm with resolve, We'll go there together. Jessica's eyes searched his. This was it. The moment of truth. And then she pressed, needing to hear him say it, needing to know they were truly on the same side. And then Ethan declared, his voice ringing with a conviction that sent a shiver down her spine. We bring the truth to light. Properly this time. With resources and a platform that James can't intimidate or outmaneuver it. He saw the worry cloud her face, the fear for the company she had built. Your company will survive, he finished firmly. Mitchell Innovations is more than its partnerships. The foundations you built are solid, even if some of the structures built on them aren't. Eleonora, who had been watching them with a quiet wisdom, beamed at her son. Pride was evident in every line of her face, a soft glow that warmed the entire room. That's my boy, she said, her voice thick with emotion. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Jessica allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. It was fragile, delicate as a butterfly's wing, but it was real. She knew the fight ahead wouldn't be simple. It won't be easy, she voiced, the reality of their situation tempering her newfound hope. James has powerful friends, deep pockets. He's woven a web that's incredibly difficult to untangle. So do I. Ethan reminded her, and in that moment she saw a spark of the ruthless, brilliant businessman he was known to be. But now that formidable energy was directed toward a worthy target, a righteous cause. And unlike James, he added with a grim smile, I don't have to hide from the truth. The truth is my greatest asset. The sheer intensity of the moment was broken by a soft yawn from Eleonora. Well, she announced, stretching gracefully, this has been quite an evening, but I think I'll try to get some more sleep before the sun comes up. She rose from her chair and walked over to Jessica, patting her hand gently. Her eyes were kind, full of a mother's knowing. Don't you worry, dear, she said softly. My son can be stubborn, and oh, can he be arrogant sometimes. But when it truly matters, when the chips are down, he always makes the right choices. But after Eleonora had gone upstairs, a companionable silence settled between Jessica and Ethan. The storm outside was beginning to ease, its violent rage softening to a gentle patter against the windows. It felt symbolic, much like the turbulence that had churned between them for so long was finally starting to calm. The anger was fading, replaced by understanding and a shared purpose. I'm sorry, Ethan said finally, his voice low and sincere. I'm sorry I ever doubted you. Jessica looked at him, a sad smile touching her lips. She couldn't hold on to the bitterness anymore. You had your reasons, she acknowledged, her voice just as quiet. Loyalty to your friends is an admirable quality, Ethan. Even when, she paused, choosing her words carefully, even when that loyalty is misplaced. Not at the expense of the truth, he countered, his gaze unwavering. He reached across the small table that separated them, his hand covering hers. His touch was warm, solid, and reassuring. Or justice, he added, his voice a low vow. The warmth of his hand seemed to seep into her, chasing away the last of the chill that had settled in her heart years ago. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. It was a promise, a pact, a silent acknowledgement that they were in this together. Two estranged souls finding their way back to each other, united against the darkness. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger, but for the first time, Jessica didn't feel like she was walking it alone. The storm was passing, and a new day was on the horizon. Thank you so much for joining me for this part of the story. It's getting so intense, and I can't wait to see what happens next. If you're enjoying this journey, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter. See you all soon. Tonight, she agreed. He slid into the booth across from her. I need to see this evidence. Why? So Mitchell Innovations can contain the damage. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. So I can do the right thing, Ethan corrected quietly. Jessica studied his face, searching for any hint of deception, any flicker of a lie. And what is the right thing in your estimation? She asked, her voice laced with skepticism. I don't know yet. His honesty was disarming, almost throwing her off balance. But burying the truth, isn't it? The silence that followed was broken by the quiet clinking of ceramic. Ella Lenina returned a small, knowing smile on her face. She slid a steaming mug of tea to each of them before gracefully settling into the booth beside Ethan. So, she said, her voice brisk and matter-of-fact, my son's business partner is a criminal, and the lovely young woman who saved me from freezing to death is his whistleblower. What are we going to do about it? The unexpected framing of their dire situation, so practical, so devoid of drama, startled a laugh out of Jessica. The sound surprised even her, a genuine, unforced laugh. She couldn't remember the last time that had happened. The tension that had been coiled in her shoulders for weeks seemed to loosen just a fraction. Mother. Ethan sighed, though the corner of his mouth twitched upwards into a reluctant smile. What am I wrong? Ella Lenina challenged, taking a delicate sip of her tea. Her eyes, bright and intelligent, twinkled over the rim of the mug. I may be old, Ethan, but I'm not blind or stupid. Jessica found herself smiling, despite the gravity of it all. No one who's met you would ever make that mistake, she said, the words feeling surprisingly true. A small, shared moment of understanding passed between the two women. Then stop dancing around each other and make a plan. Ella Lenina set down her mug with a soft, final thud. Her gaze was firm, unwavering, as she looked from Jessica to her son. Jessica has the evidence. Ethan has the influence. Between the two of you, you can fix this mess. It's not that simple, Ethan began, the weight of the corporation, the legal battles, the public fallout, all swirling in his mind. It never is, Ella Lenina agreed, her voice softening just a little. But doing the right thing rarely is. Jessica watched as Ethan's expression shifted. The hard lines of the CEO softened as he looked at his mother, a wave of warmth and respect washing over his features. In that moment, he wasn't just the head of Mitchell Innovations, he was a son, listening to the timeless wisdom that only a mother can provide. The warmth of the tea seeped into Jessica's hands, a small comfort in the storm she had unleashed. She looked at Ethan, then at Elenina. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, she didn't feel completely alone. Maybe, just maybe, his mother was right. It wasn't simple, but perhaps, together, it was possible. "All right," Jessica said, her voice steady and clear. "Let's make a plan." The air in the small diner booth shifted. The initial tension and suspicion evaporated, replaced by a fragile but determined sense of alliance. Ethan pulled a pen and a napkin from the dispenser. "Okay," he said, his focus sharpening. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." And so, under the fluorescent lights of the 24-hour diner, with the comforting presence of Elenina as their anchor, they began to chart a course. A course to expose the truth, to fight for what was right, no matter how complicated it would be. The aroma of brewing coffee and sweet tea filled the air as Jessica laid out the damning evidence she had collected over months. Digital trails, doctored reports, secret communications. With each piece of the puzzle she revealed, she watched Ethan's expression grow more grim, but also more resolved. He didn't interrupt, didn't question her motives. He listened, intently. His pen scratched across the napkin, connecting names, dates, and transactions, forming a web of deceit that had poisoned his own company from within. Ella Lennon listened too, her gaze sharp, occasionally nodding as if confirming a long-held suspicion. "This goes deeper than I thought," Ethan finally murmured, looking down at the ink-stained napkin that now held the map to a corporate conspiracy. His partner, a man he had trusted for years, had betrayed not just him, but everyone who worked for Mitchell Innovations. "We'll need a lawyer," he said, his voice now crisp with command. "Someone completely outside the company. Someone we can trust implicitly. I know a person." He looked at Jessica. "But they'll need to hear it from you. You're the key to all of this." Jessica nodded, a new sense of purpose solidifying within her. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was fuel. "I'll talk to them," she confirmed. "I'll do whatever it takes." Elenina reached across the table and placed a warm, gentle hand over Jessica's. "You are a very brave young woman," she said, her voice filled with a quiet strength that resonated deeply with Jessica. "Remember that bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of it." As the first hints of dawn began to paint the sky outside the diner window, their makeshift plan had taken shape. It was risky, dangerous even. They would be going up against a powerful, ruthless individual with everything to lose. But looking at Ethan with his determined jaw and clear eyes, and at Elenina with her unwavering faith in doing what's right, Jessica felt a surge of hope. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was theirs. The whistleblower, the CEO, and the matriarch. An unlikely trio, united against the darkness, ready to bring it all into the light. Thank you for joining us on this part of the journey. If you're invested in their story and want to see what happens next, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next chapter. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we re-diving back into the heartwarming conclusion of a story that has kept us all on the edge of our seats. Let's see how things unfold for Jessica and Ethan. Ethan's touch, the undeniable sincerity in his eyes, caused something to shift deep inside Jessica. It felt like a wall she had built around her heart for years was finally beginning to crumble. A door long bolted shut was creaking open. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You could have just left with James. You could have protected your company, your reputation." Ethan's thumb traced gentle, soothing circles on her wrist. "Perhaps I'm just tired of being the ruthless CEO everyone expects me to be," he said thoughtfully. "Or perhaps I found something far more important than quarterly projections and market share, right here in a small-town diner during a blizzard." A skeptical smile played on Jessica's lips. "Stranger things have happened, I suppose." His answering smile completely transformed his face, igniting a warmth in his eyes that melted the last of her doubts. "My mother would say it was fate." "And what would Ethan Mitchell say?" she asked, genuinely curious. He considered her question for a moment, his expression serious. "He'd say that sometimes we need to get lost to find what we're really looking for." Just then, outside the diner window, the first pale light of dawn began to peek over the horizon, illuminating the snow-covered landscape. The blizzard had passed, leaving behind a world that looked brand new, pristine, and unblemished. It was a world full of new possibilities, much like the feelings that were quietly taking root between them. Fast forward 6 months, Jessica stood before the magnificent floor-to-ceiling windows of Ethan's penthouse apartment in Burlington. Snow drifted lazily through the city air, blanketing everything in a soft white. The view of Lake Champlain at sunset was breathtaking, painted in brilliant shades of gold and crimson. But her attention wasn't on the scenery. It was fixed on the headline blazing across the screen of her tablet. "Harrington Capital executives indicted for securities fraud." Quite the anniversary gift, wouldn't you say? Ethan's voice was low and warm as he joined her at the window. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting gently on the top of her head. "6 months isn't an anniversary," Jessica corrected, a playful tone in her voice as she leaned back against his strong chest. "It's a milestone. A milestone." Then he murmured, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. 6 months since a blizzard and a lost mother changed everything. I'd call that worth celebrating." And what a whirlwind those 6 months had been. The evidence Jessica had carefully stored in her Boston safe deposit box had been absolutely devastating. It didn't just bring down James Harrington, it exposed an entire intricate network of financial manipulation that had infected multiple firms across the industry. This time, the SEC investigation was thorough, swift, and uncompromising, thanks in no small part to Ethan's quiet influence and considerable resources. He had ensured they had everything they needed. Mitchell Innovations, Ethan's company, had weathered the storm. Their stock had taken an initial hit, of course, when Ethan made the bold move to publicly disclose the fraudulent practices he'd uncovered within their partner companies. But his transparency, his unwavering commitment to reform and ethical business practices had ultimately strengthened their position in the long run. It turned out that investors respected integrity, especially when it was backed by such decisive and courageous action. Jessica had also found a new path. After the dust settled, she didn't return to the cutthroat world of corporate finance. Instead, she had accepted a position as a guest lecturer at the University of Vermont's School of Business. She was teaching a course on business ethics, a subject she now understood on a deeply personal level. Her real-world experience, her story of walking away from a corrupt system, made her lectures compelling and incredibly popular. The students weren't just learning from a textbook, they were learning from someone who had lived it. She found a profound sense of purpose in shaping the next generation of business leaders, instilling in them the values she had fought so hard to reclaim. Back in the penthouse, Ethan gently turned her round to face him. He took the tablet from her hands and set it aside on a nearby table. "Enough about them," he said, his gaze locking with hers. "Tonight is about us." He led her to the dining table, which was beautifully set for two. A bottle of her favorite champagne was chilling in an ice bucket, and the aroma of a delicious, home-cooked meal filled the air. "Did you cook all this?" Jessica asked, her eyes wide with surprise and delight. "I had some help," he admitted with a charming grin from a very detailed online tutorial, "but the intention was all mine." They sat and talked for hours, their conversation flowing as easily as the champagne. They talked about their day, their dreams for the future, and the simple, everyday things that now made up their life together. It was a life filled with quiet moments and shared laughter, a world away from the high-stakes pressure they had both left behind. "I was thinking," Ethan said later, as they stood on the balcony, wrapped in a warm blanket and watching the city lights twinkle below. The old Mitchell family cabin up on Mount Mansfield. "It's been empty for years. I was thinking we could fix it up. Spend weekends there. Maybe even..." He hesitated for a moment, then his voice grew steadier. "Maybe even make it our home someday." Jessica's heart swelled. The idea of a quiet life with him, a home built on love and trust, was everything she had secretly yearned for but never thought she would find. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears of happiness. "I would love that, Ethan. I would love that more than anything." He leaned down and kissed her, a kiss that was both a promise and a celebration. It was a testament to their journey from two strangers lost in a storm to two people who had found their way home together. The past was finally where it belonged, and their future, much like the pristine, snow-covered landscape, was a blank page waiting for them to write their own story. A story of integrity, redemption, and a love that was strong enough to weather any storm. And that, my friends, is where we'll leave them, on the cusp of a beautiful new chapter. What a journey it's been. Thank you so much for watching and for being a part of this story with me. If you enjoyed this series, please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. I'll see you all in the next video. I still can't believe it's finally over. After 3 long years of constantly looking over my shoulder, there's finally justice. I know, but I am still not sure 13 years in a federal prison is enough for what James did to you. It's not about the punishment. Not really. It's about the truth finally being acknowledged, and about reclaiming my life. Speaking of which, have you given any more thought to my offer? You know, the one about heading up the new Ethics and Compliance Division at Mitchell Innovations. It would be a perfect fit for your financial expertise, and we could set industry-leading standards for transparent business practices together. I'm still considering it, but working for my boyfriend just seems complicated. Then let's make it uncomplicated. How exactly would I do that? Marry me instead. What did you just say? I said, marry me instead. Then I'd be working for my wife, not the other way round. How do you figure that? Because you'd own me, heart and soul. You already do. This is all a bit sudden, isn't it? 'Tis it. We've spent the last 6 months, side by side, putting in 14-hour days to rebuild my company's ethical framework. We've been learning to trust again, both of us. We've fallen asleep going over SAC testimony and woken up in each other's arms. My mother says we've been married in all but name since the night of the blizzard. Your mother is a romantic meddler. My mother is never wrong, especially about what's good for me. Why an emerald? Why not a diamond? I remember you telling me once that diamonds are just a marketing scheme, a symbol of conformity. You said emeralds were different, rare, beautiful, and imperfect, just like the most interesting people. You said they symbolize hope, renewal, and growth. And that's what you've brought back into my life, Jessica, hope. So, will you marry me? Will you be my beautiful, imperfect, and incredibly interesting wife? My mother is a romantic meddler too. She always said the right man wouldn't give me what I wanted, but what I didn't know I needed, like an emerald ring from a man who actually listens. So, what you're saying is, yes. My answer is yes. Now, about my new position as your wife, does that mean I get a say in redecorating your penthouse? The bachelor pad black is a little grim, absolutely, and I'll even let you win the first argument. Thank you. I appreciate that. But you do know I'll win all the others, right? I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring more content to you. We'll see you in the next one. Upbeat, romantic intro music fades into the background. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a story that feels like it was plucked straight from a heartwarming winter movie. It's a beautiful reminder that sometimes the most unexpected detours lead us exactly where we're meant to be. So grab a cozy blanket, a warm drink, and let's get lost in this tale of second chances and unexpected love. Our story begins in a charming, newly renovated diner. Imagine the scene, polished counters gleaming, the scent of celebration in the air. The diner is closed for a private party, hosted by its owner, Eleanor. She raises a champagne glass, her eyes sparkling. 2 second chances, she toasts. Across the table, her son Ethan adds with a playful grin, and 2 blizzards. May they always lead us exactly where we need to be. His fiancée Jessica looks between the 2 of them, her heart overflowing. Even if it's not where we plan to go, she finishes, completing the thought that now binds their lives together. The 3 of them are basking in the glow of a new beginning, one that was forged in the heart of a snowstorm. Eleanor beams at the happy couple. "I knew it," she says, a triumphant note in her voice. "I saw it the moment you 2 met. The way you challenged each other, respected each other. There was no pretense, no games. It was real from the very start." Ethan laughs, a warm, affectionate sound. "Mother," he warns good-naturedly, trying to temper her enthusiasm, but Eleanor is unstoppable. "What a mother is allowed to be a little smug," she retorts, patting Jessica's hand with genuine affection. "He needed someone," she continues, her gaze softening as she looks at her son, who saw the man behind the CEO title. "And you, my dear," she says. Turning back to Jessica, "You needed someone who would stand beside you in the fight, not run from it." Her words hang in the air, a perfect summary of the strength they found in one another. Just then, as if on cue, the little bell above the diner door jingles, announcing a visitor. All 3 turn to see a familiar, friendly face. It's Mr. Winters, a kind-hearted regular who holds a special place in their story. He was their very first customer on that fateful blizzard night. He approaches their booth cautiously, holding a small, neatly wrapped package. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he says with a gentle smile. "I just heard the wonderful news about the engagement and wanted to drop this off." Jessica's face lights up. "You're always welcome here, Arthur," she assures him, her voice filled with warmth as she accepts the gift. As she unwraps it, she reveals a beautiful, hand-carved wooden snowflake, intricate and unique. "I made it myself," Mr. Winters explains, a hint of pride in his voice. "A little something to remember how it all started." Jessica is genuinely touched by the thoughtful gesture. "It's perfect," she says, her eyes shimmering. "Absolutely perfect." After Mr. Winters departs, leaving a wake of warmth behind him, Ethan picks up the delicate wooden snowflake, examining its fine details. The small carving seems to spark an idea. "We should have a winter wedding," he suggests, his voice thoughtful. The suggestion hangs in the air, filled with a sense of destiny. Jessica, ever the practical one, teases back, "What?" and come full circle right here in the diner. Eleanor, ever the romantic, chimes in immediately, "And why not? It would be uniquely yours, a story no one else could tell." Jessica protests with a laugh, "I was only joking." But Ethan's expression is serious. "I'm not," he says, his gaze thoughtful. "Not entirely, anyway. Not about the winter part, at least. There's something so poetic about it, finding our future in the very season that brought us together in the first place." Jessica pauses, considering his words. The idea, which started as a joke, begins to take root in her heart. The thought of a winter wedding, once seemingly impractical, now feels incredibly right. A slow smile spreads across her face as she warms to the concept. "December," she decides, her voice firm. But, she adds with a playful glint in her eye, "not in the diner." Ethan doesn't miss a beat. The lakeside. Then, he counters, picturing the scene, with the mountains in the background. Eleanor, ever the pragmatist, points out, "It will be cold." Ethan's eyes never leave Jessica's as he replies with a loving smile, "We'll keep each other warm." And so, 6 months later, their vision became a reality. As a gentle December snow dusted the shores of Lake Champlain, Jessica Porter became Jessica Porter Mitchell. It was an intimate, breathtaking ceremony witnessed by their closest friends and family. Eleanor, radiant in a gown of silver blue, dabbed at happy tears as the couple exchanged their vows beneath a stunning arch woven from winter roses and fragrant pine boughs. The world seemed to fall silent as Ethan spoke his vows, his voice clear and strong, carrying across the hushed gathering. "When I first met you," he began, his eyes locked on Jessica's, "you challenged everything I thought I knew. Everything I thought I knew about success, about my own worth, about what truly matters in this life." His words were a testament to the profound impact she had on him. A love story born not in a boardroom, but in the heart of a storm, proving that the greatest successes are the ones we find in each other. What an incredibly touching story, right? It just goes to show you that love can find you in the most unexpected of circumstances, and that sometimes a blizzard isn't an obstacle, but the very path to your destiny. I hope this story warmed your heart as much as it did mine. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Gentle, romantic music begins. Hello, wonderful listeners, and welcome back to our Story Corner. Today, we read diving back into a moment we've all been waiting for, the culmination of a journey from boardroom battles to a connection that redefines everything. Let's join Ethan and Jessica right where we left them, with a question hanging in the air that could change their lives forever. Slight pause. Music swells slightly. Jessica looked down at the box in Ethan's hand. Inside wasn't a diamond, but a stunning sapphire, deep and mysterious. "Why a sapphire?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with genuine curiosity. Ethan's usually serious expression softened into a smile that was just for her. "Because you're not conventional," he began, his voice low and sincere. "You're rare, you're valuable, and it's the exact color of your eyes when you were about to challenge me on something ridiculous," Ivy said in a meeting. He paused, letting the words sink in. "Also, I know diamonds remind you of Wall Street, of that cold, cutthroat world. I wanted something that only reminded you of us." "You've really thought this through," Jessica said, a tone of admiration creeping into her voice, impressed despite herself. She had always known him to be meticulous in business, but this level of personal detail was something new, something profound. "I'm thorough," he agreed, the familiar confidence returning, but then it faltered. A flicker of uncharacteristic uncertainty crossed his face. "Jessica," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "you haven't answered me." She looked up at him then, truly seeing the man before her. This wasn't just Ethan Mitchell, the cold, ruthless CEO she had once set out to expose. This was the man who had transformed, who had stood beside her, fighting for truth and justice. He had risked his company, his reputation, everything he had built, to do what was right. And now he was looking at her not as a conquest or an asset, but as an equal, a partner, someone to build a life with. Taking a deep breath, she knew she had to be sure. "Before I answer," she said carefully, choosing her words with the precision of a lawyer, "I need to know something. If I say yes, am I accepting a job as well as a proposal? Because I'm not sure I can separate the two." "The job offer is separate," Ethan interrupted, his voice firm and clear, cutting through her hesitation. "Completely separate. Accept it, decline it, counter-offer, ... That's business. We can negotiate that later." He gestured from his heart to the ring in the box. "This," he said, his gaze intense, "this is personal. This is about us. It's the only merger I care about right now." His words were the assurance she needed. The clear line between their professional and personal lives was drawn not by him as her boss, but by him as her potential partner. A wave of relief and joy washed over her. In that case, Jessica smiled, a brilliant, radiant smile that reached her eyes. She reached out, took the sapphire ring, and slipped it onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. "I accept," she declared, her voice ringing with happiness. "The proposal, that is." She gave him a playful look. "The job offer still requires some serious negotiation." Pure, unadulterated joy transformed Ethan's face. In one swift, exuberant motion, he lifted her off her feet, spinning her around in a heartfelt embrace that was full of laughter and relief. "I wouldn't expect anything less," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he set her down gently, his hands framing her face. "Name your terms, future Mrs. Mitchell." Jessica laughed, a sound full of freedom and newfound happiness, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Oh no," she countered, her eyes sparkling. "I'm keeping Porter. Professionally, at least. You'll have to earn having your name on my office door." "Challenge accepted," he murmured, his lips just inches from hers before he closed the distance, sealing their promise with a kiss that spoke of new beginnings and a shared future. Later that evening, the celebration felt both intimate and monumental. They weren't at some fancy five-star restaurant. Instead, they were at the Maple Street Diner, a place that held so many memories. But this time, there was a new warmth to it, a new sense of belonging. The diner was now under new ownership. She had purchased it with part of the substantial settlement she received after Harrington Capital S fraudulent practices were finally exposed, a victory she and Ethan had achieved together. Sitting in a familiar booth, the smell of coffee and freshly baked pie in the air, they were joined by Alina, her face alight with happiness for her friends. The diner, once a backdrop for clandestine meetings and whispered strategies, was now a symbol of her independence and their shared triumph. It represented a new chapter, built on the foundations of justice and a love that had blossomed in the most unexpected of circumstances. As they shared stories and laughter, the clinking of coffee mugs sounded like a toast to the future. Jessica looked across the table at Ethan, who was deep in conversation with Alina, his face relaxed and open. She glanced down at the sapphire on her finger, its deep blue catching the warm diner light. It wasn't just a ring, it was a promise. A promise of a partnership built on respect, a love forged in the fire of adversity, and a future where they would continue to challenge each other, support each other, and build something beautiful together, both in the courtroom and in life. And she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that this was only the beginning of their greatest adventure. Music swells and then slowly fades out. Thank you so much for joining us for this chapter of Ethan and Jessica's story. It's been such a journey, and seeing them find their happy ending is truly special. If you enjoyed this, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. We love having you as part of our community. Until next time, take care and keep reading. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we re-diving into a story that feels like it's been plucked straight from a winter fairy tale. A tale of second chances, unexpected love, and a little bit of motherly meddling. Imagine a wedding day, snow falling like gentle, glittering diamonds. The groom, Ethan, looks at his bride Jessica, his voice thick with emotion. He says, "You stood your ground when it would have been easier to run. You chose truth when lies would have been safer." He holds her hands tight, promising, "I will be worthy of that courage every day of our lives together." Now, picture Jessica, her eyes sparkling with tears and a teasing smile. She looks back at him and says, When I first met you, I thought you were the most arrogant man I'd ever encountered. The crowd laughs, and she continues, I wasn't wrong, but I discovered that your arrogance was matched by your integrity, your determination by your compassion, your ambition by your capacity for love. Her voice softens as she makes her own promise. I will remind you of those qualities whenever the world tries to make you forget them again. They seal their vows with a kiss as the snow continues to fall, creating what one guest calls a perfect circle, a story written in snow and second chances. This isn't just a wedding, it's the beautiful culmination of a journey that began with conflict and chaos. It started with Jessica, a brave whistleblower, and Ethan, a ruthless CEO. Their paths crossed in the most unexpected way, transforming them from adversaries into soulmates. Later at the reception, Jessica finds herself watching her new husband laugh with his friends across the room. She's lost in thought, replaying the incredible journey that brought them to this perfect moment. Suddenly, a voice cuts through her reverie. A penny for your thoughts. It's Eleonora, Ethan's mother, looking absolutely stunning. Jessica smiles, linking her arm with her new mother-in-law's. I was just reflecting on how different his life might have been if you had ungotten lost in that blizzard. And here's where the story takes a delightful twist. Eleonora's eyes twinkle as she replies, "Who says I was lost?" Jessica is stunned into silence. Eleonora just smiles mysteriously and says, "Sometimes a mother knows exactly what her son needs, even when he doesn't." You ... you planned it?" Jessica asks, completely incredulous, getting stranded at my diner. Eleonora's smile widens. Planned is a strong word. Let's say I created an opportunity. The blizzard was just fortunate timing. She gives Jessica's hand a reassuring pat. And don't you worry, the taxi driver was very well compensated. Before Jessica can even process this bombshell, Ethan is by her side, wrapping his arm around her waist. He's completely unaware that their entire love story might have been orchestrated by his own mother. A clever matchmaker who saw a perfect connection where others only saw conflict. What do you guys think? Is it fate? Or is it a mother's intuition that knows no bounds? This story shows that sometimes the most challenging paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. It's a powerful reminder that love can blossom in the unlikeliest of places, especially when there's a little bit of magic and a determined mother at play. It's about finding the good in someone, even when it's buried deep, and having the courage to stand by them as they find their way back to their best self. From a whistleblower and a CEO to partners for life. Their story is proof that love isn't about finding a perfect person, but about building a perfect love with an imperfect person. And maybe, just maybe, getting a little help from a mum who knows best. Thank you so much for joining me for this heartwarming story today. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. We love sharing these kinds of stories with you all. Drop a comment below and let me know what you thought about Eleonora's grand plan. Until next time, take care and stay inspired. It involves two characters, Jessica and Ethan, who have just gotten married. What are you two conspiring about? Ethan's voice, warm and amused, cut through the happy chatter of the wedding reception. He looked between his new wife, Jessica, and her mother, Ella, a playful glint in his eye. Ella, ever the picture of maternal grace, smiled serenely. Your mother was just explaining, ... Ethan started, but Ella cut in with practiced smoothness. How happy I am that you found each other, she declared, her voice carrying just enough to sound sincere to anyone listening. She beamed at them. A perfect match, as if fate itself arranged it. Jessica murmured under her breath, a sound meant only for her mother's ears. Though her eyes were dancing with amusement. You're a meddling mother. What was that, dear? Ella asked, all innocence, her head tilting slightly. Nothing. Jessica laughed, a genuine happy sound that made Ethan's heart swell. She leaned into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of his arm around her, just agreeing about fate. The truth was, her mother's meddling had been more like a carefully orchestrated campaign, a series of seemingly coincidental events that had pushed her and Ethan together. It started with that manufactured crisis at the company, the one that forced them to work closely together. Then there was the accidental double booking at that remote ski lodge during a blizzard, leaving them with no choice but to share a cozy cabin. Jessica had been furious at the time, convinced it was just another one of her mother's schemes. But as the storm raged outside, she and Ethan had talked for hours, really talked, for the first time. They'd argued about business ethics, debated philosophy, and discovered a shared love for old black and white films. Trapped by the snow, they had found a shelter in each other that was warmer and safer than any physical structure. Now, looking back, she wouldn't change a thing. The band leader announced the first dance, and the opening notes of a classic waltz filled the air. Ethan led her toward the dance floor, his hand firm and gentle at her back. As they began to move, surrounded by the warm glow of twinkling lights and the smiling faces of their friends and family, he pulled her closer. You look like you're keeping a secret, he observed, his voice a low rumble against her ear. His gaze was steady, searching, but full of trust. Jessica smiled up at him, her heart overflowing. A few stray snowflakes, remnants from their entrance into the reception hall, had caught in her eyelashes, glittering like tiny diamonds. The memory of that first snowstorm, the one that had started it all, was fresh in her mind. It was their secret, the foundation of their story. I'll tell you someday, she whispered, her promise a soft breath against his cheek. When we're old and grey and still arguing about ethics violations in board meetings. Promise, he asked, his lips curving into a smile as he spun her gracefully beneath the chandeliers, which sparkled like a constellation of indoor stars. Promise, she agreed, rising on her tiptoes to meet his lips in a tender kiss that sealed the vow. In that moment, with the music swelling around them, they were the only two people in the world. Outside, unseen by the happy couple and their guests, the snow continued to fall softly. It descended in a quiet, steady rhythm, covering the streets of Burlington in a fresh, pristine blanket of white. Each flake was a tiny miracle, a unique crystal adding to a landscape of pure possibility. It was a beautiful, peaceful scene, a perfect visual metaphor for their love story. It served as a quiet reminder that sometimes the most perfect, most beautiful endings, or rather, beginnings, don't start with sunshine and clear skies. They begin with unexpected storms, with challenges and unforeseen circumstances. And they are built on the simple, profound courage to open your heart and offer shelter to someone in need. Because in sheltering another, you often find that you've also found a home for yourself. Thank you so much for watching this story unfold. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more tales of love and unexpected beginnings. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you in the next video.